The sun was shining brightly over the crystal-clear Caribbean waters as the luxury cruise ship, the Majestic, set sail from Miami. It was a dream vacation for many passengers aboard, promising a week of relaxation, fun, and adventure. Among the excited travelers were the newlyweds, Emily and Jake Thompson. They had saved up for this honeymoon for years and were eager to explore the ship and the various exotic ports of call. The couple was thrilled with their cabin, a spacious room with a private balcony overlooking the ocean. The ship itself was a marvel of modern engineering, with multiple swimming pools, fine dining restaurants, a grand theater, and a casino. The atmosphere was lively, and the passengers couldn't wait to enjoy the activities and amenities. On the second evening of the cruise, Emily and Jake attended a formal dinner in the ship's elegant dining hall. The room was filled with laughter and chatter, and the couple enjoyed the company of other passengers at their table. After dinner, they decided to take a romantic walk on the deck under the moonlit sky. As they strolled hand in hand, Emily suddenly stopped and stared ahead. "Jake, do you see that woman over there?" she whispered, pointing toward the bow of the ship. Jake squinted into the dim light but saw nothing unusual. "No, I don't see anyone. Are you sure?" "Yes, she was just there a moment ago, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, like from the 1920s," Emily insisted. Jake laughed softly. "Maybe you've had one too many glasses of champagne. Let's head back to our cabin." Despite Jake's reassurance, Emily couldn't shake the eerie feeling. As they returned to their room, she kept glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see the mysterious woman again. The next morning, Emily and Jake decided to explore more of the ship. They visited the pool, played a few games in the arcade, and even tried their luck at the casino. In the afternoon, they returned to their cabin for a quick rest before dinner. While Jake took a nap, Emily decided to tidy up their belongings. As she rearranged the clothes in the closet, she noticed a small, leather-bound diary tucked away in a corner. Curious, she picked it up and began to read. The diary belonged to a woman named Eleanor Hart, and the entries were dated from 1925. Eleanor had been a passenger on the ship's maiden voyage and had written about her excitement and the people she met on board. However, as Emily read further, the entries took a darker turn. Eleanor wrote about feeling watched and hearing whispers at night. The last entry was particularly disturbing. "I can feel the cold presence of someone near me. I am not alone in this cabin. If anyone finds this diary, please help me. Something terrible is happening on this ship." Emily's heart raced as she read the final words. She showed the diary to Jake when he woke up, and he was equally disturbed. They decided to take the diary to the ship's historian, hoping to learn more about Eleanor Hart and her fate. Dr. Samuel Wexler, the ship's historian, was a distinguished-looking man in his 60s. He was fascinated by the diary and thanked Emily and Jake for bringing it to his attention. He promised to investigate and let them know what he found. The next day, Dr. Wexler invited the couple to his office. "I've done some research on Eleanor Hart," he began. "She was indeed a passenger on the ship's maiden voyage in 1925. Her disappearance was a mystery, and her body was never found." Emily shivered. "Do you think her ghost is haunting the ship?" Dr. Wexler nodded slowly. "It's possible. There have been reports of sightings over the years, but none as detailed as yours. I believe Eleanor's spirit might be trapped here, seeking help to find peace." Jake frowned. "What can we do to help her?" Dr. Wexler suggested conducting a seance to try to communicate with Eleanor's spirit. He believed that if they could learn more about what happened to her, they might be able to help her move on. Dr. Wexler gathered in the couple's cabin. The historian had brought candles, a Ouija board, and other items for the seance. As the candles flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls, Dr. Wexler began the ritual. "Spirit of Eleanor Hart, we call upon you," he intoned. "If you are here, please give us a sign." For a few moments, there was nothing but silence. Then, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly, and the Ouija board's planchette began to move on its own. Emily and Jake watched in amazement as it spelled out a message: "Help Maine." Emily's voice trembled as she asked, "Eleanor, what happened to you?" The planchette moved again, spelling out "murdered." Jake's eyes widened. "Who killed you?" "Captain." Dr. Wexler's face grew pale. "The captain of the ship." "Why?" "He wanted the diamonds." Emily and Jake exchanged stunned glances. "What diamond?" Emily asked. "Blue diamond. Hidden." Dr. Wexler explained that there had been rumors of a priceless blue diamond being smuggled on board the ship during its maiden voyage. It was believed to have been lost when Eleanor disappeared. The historian suggested searching Eleanor's old cabin for clues. With the ship's permission, they gained access to the cabin, which had been sealed for decades. Inside, they found an old, dusty jewelry box hidden behind a loose panel in the wall. Inside the box was the legendary blue diamond, glittering in the dim light. Alongside it was a note from Eleanor. "If you find this, please tell the world what happened to me. The captain killed me for this diamond. My spirit cannot rest until justice is served." Emily and Jake were determined to honor Eleanor's wish. They took the diamond and the note to the ship's captain, demanding an investigation into the long-buried crime. The ship's captain, a descendant of the original captain from 1925, was initially skeptical but agreed to look into the matter. With the evidence presented by Emily and Jake, the case was reopened and a thorough investigation was conducted. It was discovered that the original captain had indeed murdered Eleanor Hart for the diamond, staging her disappearance to cover up the crime. The current captain publicly acknowledged the findings and arranged a memorial service for Eleanor. During the service, held on the deck of the ship under a starlit sky, Emily, Jake, and Dr. Wexler were present as the truth was finally revealed. The crew and passengers paid their respects to Eleanor, and her spirit was finally laid to rest. As the service concluded, Emily felt a sense of peace wash over her. She glanced toward the bow of the ship and saw a faint, ethereal figure standing there, smiling. It was Eleanor, her face filled with gratitude. She gave a small wave before fading away into the night. The remainder of the cruise was uneventful, and Emily and Jake enjoyed their time exploring the islands and relaxing on the ship. They felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing they had helped bring closure to a tragic story. Before disembarking, they visited Dr. Wexler one last time. He thanked them for their courage and determination in solving the mystery. "You both have done a great service, not just for Eleanor, but for everyone on this ship," he said. As they left the historian's office, Emily took one last look at the vast ocean. She felt a connection to the ship and its history, knowing that they had played a part in bringing peace to a restless spirit. Emily and Jake returned home with a story that would stay with them forever. They often thought about Eleanor Hart and the events of that fateful cruise, grateful for the experience that had brought them closer together and given them a deeper appreciation for the mysteries of the past. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of the Caribbean Sea, the spirit of Eleanor Hart finally rested, her story told, her soul free at last. The SS Atlantic Star was one of the most luxurious cruise ships ever built. It promised a voyage of opulence and adventure, attracting passengers from all walks of life. Among them were Mark, an experienced sailor now turned cruise enthusiast, and his wife, Laura, who had long dreamed of this once-in-a-lifetime trip. Their cabin was spacious, with a balcony offering breathtaking views of the ocean. The ship was a marvel of modern engineering, boasting multiple restaurants, a grand theater, swimming pools, and even a small amusement park for children. The crew was attentive and professional, ensuring every passenger felt like royalty. As the SS Atlantic Star left port, the excitement was palpable. Passengers gathered on the deck, waving goodbye to the shore as the ship sailed into the horizon. The captain, a stern but kind man named Captain Williams, promised an unforgettable journey. The first few days were filled with activities and exploration. Mark and Laura indulged in fine dining, attended shows, and made new friends. However, Mark, with his sailor's intuition, began to sense something amiss. It was subtle at first, a flicker of unease that he couldn't quite place. One evening, while enjoying a drink at the ship's bar, Mark overheard a group of crew members talking in hushed tones. They mentioned something about strange occurrences and missing colleagues. Mark's curiosity was piqued, but before he could ask, the crew members dispersed, noticing his interest. That night, as Mark and Laura prepared for bed, they heard a series of strange noises coming from the hallway outside their cabin. It sounded like footsteps, followed by muffled voices, and then silence. Mark opened the door to investigate but found the hallway empty. The unsettling feeling grew stronger. The next morning, the ship was abuzz with rumors. A crew member had gone missing overnight. Captain Williams assured everyone it was a simple case of a crew member who had perhaps left his post, but Mark wasn't convinced. Throughout the day, more crew members reported strange events, doors opening and closing by themselves, whispering voices, and cold drafts in the warm corridors. Passengers began to notice the crew's nervousness, and the atmosphere on the ship grew tense. Mark decided to speak with Captain Williams directly. He found the captain in his quarters, poring over maps and logs. The captain looked up, his face lined with worry. "Captain, what's going on?" Mark asked bluntly. Captain Williams sighed. "I wish I knew, Mr. Harris. This ship, there's something wrong. We've lost 3 crew members now. They just vanished. No trace." Mark felt a chill run down his spine. "Has this happened before?" The captain nodded slowly. "Not to this extent, but there have been stories. Legends of ships with disappearing crews. I always thought they were just that, stories." Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Mark enlisted the help of Laura and a few other concerned passengers. Together, they decided to investigate the disappearances. They started with the ship's security footage. With the captain's reluctant permission, they reviewed hours of video, looking for any clues. What they found was chilling. In the footage, the missing crew members could be seen walking through the ship's corridors, going about their duties. Then, without warning, they would stop, look around as if hearing something, and walk off screen, never to reappear. Mark and his team traced the paths of the missing crew members to a secluded part of the ship, a storage area in the lower decks. The area was seldom used and held old, unused equipment. They decided to investigate further. As they descended into the lower decks, the air grew colder. The once vibrant and bustling ship seemed distant, and a heavy silence enveloped them. The storage area was dimly lit, filled with shadows that seemed to dance around them. Mark felt a growing sense of dread. In the far corner of the storage area, they discovered a door that wasn't on any of the ship's blueprints. It was old and covered in rust, with a heavy padlock hanging from it. Mark's heart raced as he realized they might have found something significant. Using a crowbar, Mark pried the padlock open. The door creaked as it swung inward, revealing a small, dark room. Inside, they found an assortment of old navigational equipment, charts, and a large, dusty book. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Laura picked up the book and opened it. It was a journal, filled with the writings of a previous captain of the SS Atlantic Star. As she read aloud, a horrifying story unfolded. The ship, it seemed, had been cursed by a vengeful spirit, a crew member who had been wronged and left to die during a voyage decades ago. The spirit had vowed to take revenge on the ship and its crew, ensuring that they would never find peace. As they stood in the dark room, absorbing the chilling revelations, the temperature dropped even further. A cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing their flashlight. Panic set in as they struggled to find their way back to the door. Suddenly, they heard a voice, a whisper that seemed to come from all around them. "You should not have come here." The voice was filled with anger and sorrow, echoing off the walls. Mark called out into the darkness. "We know what happened to you. We're sorry for what was done. But this isn't the way. Let us help you find peace." The whispering grew louder, more agitated. "Peace? There is no peace for me." Laura, holding the journal tightly, spoke softly. "We can help you. We can remember you. Tell your story. But you have to stop this." The whispering stopped, replaced by a profound silence. Then, a figure appeared before them, a ghostly apparition of a man, dressed in old sailor's garb, his face etched with pain. He looked at them with hollow eyes. "Tell my story," he said, his voice barely audible. "Tell them what happened." With those words, the apparition vanished, and the room's temperature returned to normal. Mark and the others quickly left the storage area, their hearts heavy but determined to fulfill the spirit's request. Back on deck, they shared their findings with Captain Williams. The captain, though skeptical, agreed to hold a memorial service for the lost crew member. The passengers and crew gathered as the story was recounted, and a moment of silence was observed in his memory. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences ceased. The ship continued its voyage without further incident, and the missing crew members were never found, presumed lost at sea. However, the atmosphere lightened, and the sense of dread that had hung over the ship dissipated. When the SS Atlantic Star finally docked, Mark and Laura disembarked with a sense of accomplishment. They had faced a terrifying mystery and helped bring peace to a tormented soul. The experience had bonded them closer together and left them with a story they would never forget. As they returned to their normal lives, they often thought about the voyage and the lessons they had learned. They knew that the sea held many secrets, some darker than others, but they also knew the power of compassion and understanding in bringing light to even the darkest of places. And somewhere, far out on the open ocean, the spirit of a forgotten sailor finally found rest, knowing that his story had been told and his memory honored. The SS Atlantic Star sailed on, free from its haunted past, carrying with it the promise of new adventures and untold stories. The MS Odyssey, a grand cruise ship, promised an extraordinary voyage across the Atlantic, with its final destination being the lush shores of the Caribbean. The passengers, a mix of families, honeymooners, and adventure seekers, were excited for the journey ahead. Among them was Robert, a retired history professor with a keen interest in maritime lore, and his daughter, Claire, who had persuaded him to take the trip as a way to relax and unwind. Their cabin was situated on one of the higher decks, offering a magnificent view of the ocean. The ship was equipped with every luxury imaginable: fine dining restaurants, lavish entertainment, and numerous recreational activities. It was a floating city, designed to provide a perfect vacation for its guests. As the ship set sail, the mood was jubilant. Robert and Claire explored the ship, taking in the sights and sounds. Robert couldn't help but notice a peculiar plaque near the ship's library, commemorating an old legend about a cursed voyage from the ship's past. Intrigued, he made a mental note to investigate further. The first few days were uneventful, filled with sunny skies and calm seas. Robert spent his days reading on the deck, while Claire enjoyed the onboard activities. One evening, during a particularly beautiful sunset, Robert decided to visit the library to learn more about the ship's history. The library was a quiet, dimly lit room filled with shelves of books. Robert found a dusty old tome that detailed the ship's origins and past voyages. As he read, he discovered a troubling story from the early 1900s, when the MS Odyssey was first launched. The ship had once been known as the SS Tempest, and during its maiden voyage, it encountered a severe storm. Many passengers perished, and those who survived spoke of ghostly apparitions and eerie occurrences. The ship was said to be cursed, and it was renamed and refurbished to distance it from its haunted past. Robert was deeply engrossed in the story when he heard a faint, chilling whisper behind him. He turned around but found no one there. Shrugging it off as his imagination, he returned to his reading, but the feeling of unease lingered. As the days went by, strange things began to happen. Passengers reported seeing shadowy figures in the hallways and hearing unexplainable noises at night. Objects moved on their own, and the temperature would suddenly drop in certain areas of the ship. Claire, who had initially dismissed her father's concerns, started experiencing these phenomena herself. One night, as Claire was getting ready for bed, she saw a reflection in the bathroom mirror that wasn't her own. It was a woman in old-fashioned clothing, her eyes wide with fear. Claire screamed, and the apparition vanished. She ran to her father's cabin, trembling with terror. Robert decided it was time to bring these occurrences to the attention of the ship's crew. He approached Captain Anderson, a seasoned mariner who had been with the MS Odyssey for over a decade. The captain listened patiently but seemed skeptical. He assured Robert that the ship was perfectly safe and that these incidents were probably due to the overactive imaginations of the passengers. Despite the captain's reassurances, the disturbances continued. The ship's mood shifted from excitement to anxiety. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Robert suggested holding a seance to communicate with whatever spirits might be haunting the ship. Reluctantly, Claire agreed. They invited a few fellow passengers who had also experienced strange events: Alice and John, a honeymooning couple, and Sam, a solo traveler who claimed to have seen a ghostly sailor in his cabin. They gathered in a quiet lounge late at night, lighting candles and placing their hands on a makeshift Ouija board. "Is there anyone here with us?" Robert asked, his voice steady but apprehensive. The planchette began to move, slowly at first, then more decisively, spelling out yes. "Who are you?" Claire asked. The board responded, "Anne." Robert's eyes widened. "Anne, were you a passenger on the SS Tempest?" "Yes." "What happened to you?" Alice asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Betrayed. Murdered." The group exchanged nervous glances. "By whom?" Robert pressed. The planchette moved again, spelling out a name: Captain. The room grew cold, and the candles flickered. A sense of dread filled the air as Anne's tragic story unfolded. She had been a young woman traveling alone, and the captain of the SS Tempest had taken advantage of her, ultimately leading to her death. Her spirit, along with those of other wronged passengers, had remained trapped on the ship ever since. Determined to end the curse, Robert and Claire decided to confront Captain Anderson once more, this time armed with the knowledge from the seance. They were joined by the others who had participated, hoping that their combined experiences would convince the captain. Captain Anderson listened, his expression hardening as they relayed Anne's story. He revealed that he was well aware of the ship's dark history, but had kept it hidden to prevent panic among the passengers. He explained that the MS Odyssey had undergone numerous exorcisms and blessings, but the spirits seemed to persist. Robert suggested that they hold a formal ceremony to acknowledge the wrongs of the past and to honor those who had suffered. Captain Anderson reluctantly agreed, and preparations were made for a memorial service. The memorial service was held on the ship's deck under a cloudy sky. Passengers and crew gathered, their faces solemn as Captain Anderson recounted the tragic history of the SS Tempest. A wreath was cast into the sea, and a moment of silence was observed. As the service concluded, a cold wind swept across the deck, and the ghostly figure of Anne appeared before them, her expression softening. She looked at Robert and Claire, nodding gratefully before slowly fading away. The oppressive atmosphere that had haunted the ship seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of peace. The rest of the voyage was uneventful, and the passengers gradually relaxed, enjoying the ship's amenities once more. Robert and Claire felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing they had helped bring closure to a tragic chapter in the ship's history. When they finally reached the Caribbean, the passengers disembarked, bidding farewell to the MS Odyssey. Robert and Claire returned home with a story they would never forget, a tale of courage, compassion, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Back in their everyday lives, they often thought about the voyage and the spirits they had encountered. They knew they had played a small but important part in righting historical wrongs and bringing peace to tormented souls. And somewhere, far out at sea, the MS Odyssey sailed on, free from its haunted past, carrying with it the memories of those who had once been lost but were now finally at rest. If you want to see more horror stories, please like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, thank you, and see you in the next videos.